Under the cold light of the orbital chamber, 12 figures sat around a vast table of polished stone. Their faces, aged and identical, reflected the silver gleam of the holographic planet hovering before them. Earth spun silently in the void, blue and serene, its clouds swirling like fragile lace. At the center of the council sat the Supreme Matron of War, Althera Venn, her posture rigid, her hands clasped around a carved staff that marked her authority. Around her, the other matrons waited, unmoving, as if carved from the same ancient stone. "Let the session begin," Althera said, her voice firm but measured. The chamber's lights dimmed, and the holographic projection expanded, revealing the tiny signal bursts that emanated from the human world, waves of digital noise spilling recklessly into the cosmos. "There it is again," she continued. "Unregulated transmissions. Songs, laughter, images of chaos. The species calls itself human." One of the matrons to her right, Selith Ara, leaned forward. "They are primitives. Their world is young, their minds undisciplined. Yet their influence bleeds beyond their gravity well. They speak to the stars without permission." A murmur of agreement rippled around the table. "They broke the covenant of silence," another added. "No emerging world may announce itself until it understands consequence. These humans defy order." Althera studied the planet with a faint frown. She had seen countless civilizations rise and vanish in her lifetime, each one bound by the same fragile thread of arrogance. But there was something different here, something untamed. The transmissions from Earth carried a rhythm, a strange vitality. They were not the cries of conquerors, nor the prayers of the fearful. They were, above all else, alive. "Our intelligence reports confirm," said Selith, activating a series of visual recordings. Scenes of human life flickered before them. Crowded cities pulsing with light, children running through rain, soldiers saluting beneath flags, musicians performing before roaring crowds. They celebrate chaos. They turn suffering into performance. "This is a species that refuses to bow." Refusal, Althera murmured, is the first symptom of danger. The council's logic was simple. Where unpredictability existed, rebellion followed. And rebellion, in the great web of galactic governance, was infection. A silence settled as the holographic display shifted again, this time revealing projections of potential human military capacity. "They possess primitive nuclear arms," said Selith. "Metal shells propelled by fire. Crude, but potent enough to damage local systems." Another matron scoffed. "Ants with sparks. Shall we tremble before them?" Althera raised her hand, silencing the noise. "No, we shall not tremble. We shall act." Her gaze returned to the image of Earth, its oceans gleaming like liquid glass. "The Galactic Council of Dominion has long protected order. We cannot allow a world to speak without permission, to contaminate the silence of civilized space. I will call the vote." The chamber's air thickened. Each matron placed her palm against a glowing circle before her. The table pulsed with light, 12 points flaring in unison. The decision was made. Unanimous, the chamber's artificial voice announced. "Declaration of war against the planet designated Sol 3. The words hung in the air like a sentence pronounced by the universe itself. Althera rose. "Prepare the message. Deliver it through the quantum relay. Make certain they understand their defiance has been noted." Selith hesitated. "Matron, forgive me, but what if they do not comprehend the nature of war?" "Then they will learn." The message was composed in the universal diplomatic code, mathematically pure, incapable of misinterpretation. It declared that the species known as humanity had violated galactic law and that corrective measures would commence. The transmission was dispatched in silence, crossing light years in an instant. The council watched the indicator blink as the signal reached the human sphere. Then they waited. Minutes passed. Hours stretched. The chamber remained silent except for the faint hum of machinery. Althera sat motionless, eyes fixed on the holographic planet. She expected fear. She expected confusion, even submission. But what came instead was a sound none of them could classify. At first, it was faint, a distorted echo. Then clearer, a burst of noise, rhythmic and uneven. It rose in tone, fell again and repeated. The chamber's translators struggled, recalibrated, and then displayed the result. Laughter. The matron stared. "What is that?" one whispered. "An audio pattern," said Seleth. "Unstructured. It repeats across multiple frequencies. The source is planetary-wide. It may be a coded response." Another matron frowned. "It sounds like amusement. Impossible." But the data confirmed it. The entire human network had reacted not with fear or protest, but with waves of laughter. Millions of overlapping voices, some genuine, some distorted through their strange digital networks. The feed displayed snippets of human broadcasts, faces grinning, bodies shaking, people clutching their sides in uncontrollable mirth. Some had even placed text over the council's solemn declaration, twisting it into absurd phrases. The chamber erupted in disbelief. Are they mocking us? Is this how they communicate aggression? Althera said nothing. Her eyes remained on the images. Humans, their expressions unguarded, their voices filled with sound that seemed to defy meaning. Yet beneath the noise, she sensed something potent. They were not ignorant of the danger. They simply refused to treat it with reverence. "Run an analysis," she ordered. "Cross-reference emotional frequency, behavioral markers, intent indicators. I want to know why they do this." The systems complied. Data cascaded across the display, translating laughter into statistics, frequencies, and probability models. The conclusion appeared, simple yet incomprehensible. No aggression detected. Emotion, amusement. "They find us amusing," Seleth whispered. The council's authority had never been mocked. No species had ever dared respond to a declaration of war with mirth. For a moment, Althera felt something rare, uncertainty. The chamber seemed smaller, the air thinner. She could almost feel the sound vibrating through her bones, alien and intimate. "What manner of creature laughs at death?" one matron said, half in awe, half in dread. Althera turned toward her peers, her expression unreadable. "A creature that does not yet understand consequence," she said finally. But her voice lacked conviction. The laughter continued, echoing through the chamber's audio systems, looping endlessly, blending until it resembled a kind of music. Some of the matrons covered their ears. Others simply stared, lost in the absurdity of it all. "Cut the transmission," Althera commanded. The sound ceased. Silence fell again, heavy and absolute. For the first time in centuries, the Supreme Matron of War felt a tremor of doubt. She rose slowly, her reflection flickering across the holographic earth. "They do not fear us," she said softly, "and a species without fear cannot be controlled." Her gaze lingered on the planet's surface, where light danced like laughter itself. "Prepare the armadas," she ordered at last. "If they will not respect silence, we will teach them to listen." As the council adjourned, the echo of human laughter still lingered faintly in the machinery, a ghostly reminder of something neither mockery nor defiance could fully explain. And in that echo, hidden beneath the static, was the first whisper of a truth that would soon unravel the galaxy, that there are powers in joy far greater than any weapon forged in fear. The laughter had not stopped. Days after the declaration, the Galactic Council's listening posts still captured waves of human amusement pulsing across the planet's networks. The sound fluctuated with a kind of chaotic precision, spreading through thousands of communication channels, from the smallest personal devices to the orbital satellites that glittered like dust above the blue sphere. In the silent chamber of the Dominion, Althera Venn sat alone, her eyes fixed on the data streams cascading across her console. She had studied languages born of light, silence, and even gravity, but never had she encountered one that thrived on absurdity. Seleth Ara entered quietly, carrying a crystalline tablet. "We've completed the emotional frequency analysis," she said. "There's no indication of distress. They are genuinely entertained." Althera did not look up. Entertained by what? By us, apparently. Seleth hesitated, her composure slipping for the first time in decades. The humans have transformed our declaration into a kind of performance. They've taken our message, altered it, and distributed it as a cultural artifact. They call it a meme. Althera turned slowly, her gaze sharp. Explain. Seleth activated the tablet. Holographic projections filled the air, moving images of humans laughing, pointing at distorted renditions of the council's symbol, replacing it with exaggerated faces and absurd captions. They convert serious communication into parody, she said. It seems to be a social reflex, a way to absorb fear without acknowledging it. Mockery as adaptation, Althera murmured. They trivialize threat. It may be more complex than that, Seleth replied. The analysts suggest humor functions as a unifying signal. Their species uses laughter to synchronize emotional states. It diffuses anxiety. In doing so, it prevents panic. Althera studied one of the images more closely. A group of humans had re-edited the council's broadcast, adding strange sounds and distorted music. The message of domination had become farce. The species was laughing not at the situation, but at itself, reveling in its own smallness before the cosmic stage. They laugh at their own destruction, Althera said softly. I do not understand such defiance. Perhaps it is not defiance, Seleth said. Perhaps it is survival. The chamber doors slid open, and a new figure entered, a younger analyst, Narai Tull, her face drawn with sleepless tension. Matrons, forgive the intrusion, but I bring updates from the cultural division. She bowed quickly, her voice trembling slightly. We've begun linguistic immersion into human data networks. Their informational web is vast, chaotic, decentralized, but astonishingly resilient. It thrives on contradiction. Althera gestured for her to continue. The more they are threatened, Narai said, the more creative they become. Fear appears to stimulate innovation. They convert anxiety into expression. Seleth frowned. You mean they evolve through laughter? In a sense, Narai replied. It acts as a collective therapy. No single authority directs it. The species self-stabilizes emotionally through shared absurdity. Althera's hands tightened on the edge of the table. A civilization that requires no control, she whispered. That cannot be ruled through fear. Which makes them dangerous, Seleth said. Unpredictable. If they cannot be subdued psychologically, they must be subdued physically. Perhaps, Althera said, her voice quiet but steady. But first, I want to know the mind we are attempting to conquer. Over the next cycles, the Council's analysts dissected humanity's digital life. They studied fragments of cinema, theater, and virtual dialogue. They traced the patterns of humor, charting the evolution from simple jest to layered irony. The humans joked about tragedy, politics, love, and even extinction. There was no sacred subject. The more forbidden the topic, the louder the laughter. It was a culture of resilience wrapped in foolishness, defiance masquerading as frivolity. Althera watched the recordings late into the night. At first she felt disdain, then confusion, and finally, a reluctant fascination. A video displayed a human comedian standing before a crowd, speaking of fear and death, yet drawing joy from them. The audience roared in delight. It was ritual, she realized, an exorcism through sound. When Seleth entered again, Althera was still watching. You see it now, Seleth said quietly. Their strength is chaos. No, Althera said. Their strength is freedom. Seleth approached. Freedom destroys order. You built this council on structure. You cannot admire what you must destroy. Althera's eyes did not leave the projection. Perhaps structure itself is the illusion. For a long moment, the two women stood in silence as laughter echoed softly from the playback. The sound was infectious, not cruel or mocking, but strangely warm. Matron, Seleth said finally, shall we proceed with military deployment? Not yet, Althera replied. Send an envoy instead, a translator, someone to make sense of this madness before we extinguish it. Seleth hesitated. It may be futile. They will not take us seriously. Then perhaps that is the point. Narai was chosen for the mission. She was young enough to adapt, trained in over 100 cognitive patterns, and untainted by the arrogance that clouded her elders. Her vessel descended toward the human planet under stealth, transmitting passive scans of electromagnetic chatter. She reported constantly, as she observed. Their species is divided, she said through a neural link. Endless factions, yet they share laughter across every boundary. It binds them stronger than fear divides them. Even now, they make jokes about invasion. Some imagine us as friendly. Others ridicule us completely. Do they understand we are real? Seleth asked through the transmission. Some do, Narai said, but they still laugh. On the third day of observation, Narai entered the atmosphere and hovered over a sprawling city awash in lights. She listened to the noise, the blend of music, speech, and laughter rolling like ocean waves. The humans seemed to live within perpetual chaos, but it was not disorder. It was rhythm. Then, unexpectedly, a signal pierced her receiver, a voice broadcast globally, translated instantly by her implants. A human newscaster speaking with irreverent delight. Breaking news. The galaxy has declared war on Earth, and Earth has declared a meme war in return. Laughter followed. Millions joined in chorus, not of fear, but celebration. Narai whispered, almost reverently, "They've turned war into a game." Althera listened from orbit, her face unreadable. "And how does one conquer a species that laughs at conquest?" she asked. "There is no answer yet," Seleth replied. "But we must find one before the fleets arrive." When Narai returned, she carried with her recordings, hours of laughter, human dialogue, and fragments of their humor. The council gathered to hear them. As the sounds filled the chamber again, something unexpected happened. One of the elder matrons, a woman who had not smiled in a century, let out a brief, involuntary laugh. It was small, uncertain, but unmistakable. The others stared in silence. Althera turned to her, astonished. "You find them amusing?" The old matron composed herself. "For a moment, yes. Their noise is infectious." "That infection," Seleth warned, "is precisely what we must contain." But Althera's thoughts were elsewhere. She replayed the laughter in her mind, not as a threat, but as a mystery. What if this noise, this strange collective joy, was not defiance, but invitation? What if it was the first language the galaxy had never learned to speak? When the chamber emptied, she remained alone, gazing at the planet below. Her reflection merged with the image of Earth, two faces overlapping, the conqueror and the observer. "They laugh because they live," she whispered to herself. "And we have forgotten what that means." The thought unsettled her, yet it also ignited something she could not suppress: curiosity. She summoned the communications officer. "Send a new message," she said. "No threats, no warnings. Ask them, why do you laugh?" The officer hesitated, uncertain. "And if they respond?" Althera allowed herself the faintest of smiles. "Then perhaps the war has already changed shape." The fleets arrived in silence. Vast ships of burnished metal drifted into Earth's orbit, their hulls reflecting the pale light of the sun like a swarm of silver insects. They stretched across the darkness in perfect geometric formation, each vessel charged with weapons capable of reducing continents to vapor. Yet below, the planet remained unshaken. Cities glowed, music thundered, and human transmissions pulsed through every channel with the same bewildering rhythm of laughter. From her command chamber aboard the flagship Vigilant Crown, Althera Venn watched the spectacle unfold, her reflection fractured across the glass viewport. "They are not evacuating," Seleth reported. "No mobilization, no defense grid activation, not even a request for negotiation. They simply continue." "Continue what?" Althera asked. "Living," Seleth said, her tone laced with disbelief. "Trading, arguing, joking. Their networks are flooded with our images again. They call us space moms now. I'm told it is affectionate mockery." Narai, standing at the rear of the chamber, shifted uneasily. "Their humor spreads faster than fear," she said. "They've already turned our ships into icons." Children wear our fleet insignia as decorations. They've made us entertainment. Althera stared down at the planet. Then they have chosen their battlefield. With a motion of her hand, she ordered the descent of the first detachment, observation drones and atmospheric probes. The machines plunged through the clouds, trailing luminous vapor as they entered the skies. Moments later, the human networks erupted again. Live streams showed the glowing spheres descending over cities, and instead of panic, people gathered in crowds, pointing cameras upward, cheering. Within minutes, videos titled "Alien Orbs Go BRRR" spread across millions of feeds. "They celebrate intrusion," Seleth muttered. "They mock their own doom." Althera's jaw tightened. Mockery cannot shield them from consequence. But consequence did not behave as she expected. The first contact teams landed in a sprawling human metropolis, armed and prepared for resistance. Instead, they were met by flashing lights, microphones, and food stalls. The streets were lined with banners painted in bright colors. Someone had written "Welcome Galactic Friends" in enormous letters across a public square. The air vibrated with laughter and music. Humans danced beneath the shadow of the alien craft, holding up signs that read, "Smile for the invasion." Reports flooded back to the flagship, each one more surreal than the last. Soldiers found themselves surrounded by civilians requesting selfies. A child presented a drone pilot with a balloon shaped like a starship. Broadcasts from human entertainers showed elaborate parodies of alien military formations. Every attempt at intimidation dissolved in spectacle. "They do not comprehend authority," Seleth said bitterly. "They see power and turn it into a stage." "Perhaps they comprehend it too well," Narai countered. "They've learned to steal it." Althera watched the images with a mixture of awe and unease. Her warriors, bred to instill fear, looked absurd amid the noise and color of human celebration. The enemy had no uniforms, no visible hierarchy, only countless faces bright with reckless delight. They disarmed through joy. On the third day, the Council transmitted an ultimatum. The message appeared across every human broadcast simultaneously, voiced in calm, measured tones. "Cease your defiance or be silenced." Within minutes, the response came, not from governments or generals, but from comedians, streamers, and musicians. One man, standing before a crowd of thousands, held a microphone and declared, "If they're going to silence us, they'll have to sit through open mic night first." The crowd roared with laughter. The line was repeated endlessly across the networks, reshaped into song, animation, and endless variations. "It's spreading faster than our own communications," Seleth said. "They've hijacked our frequencies." Althera leaned forward, her voice low. "No, they've merged with them. Their chaos is assimilation." Narai's sensors confirmed it. Human hackers had infiltrated the Council's relay network, embedding fragments of laughter and music into the communication matrix. Every transmission now carried echoes of amusement, ghostly giggles that haunted even encrypted channels. Soldiers reported hearing laughter in their helmets, not from humans, but from within the ship systems. Morale faltered. The soldiers began hesitating before each command. Fear had reversed its direction. It no longer belonged to the humans. Althera called an emergency assembly aboard the flagship. The officers gathered, faces drawn, armor gleaming beneath the sterile lights. "You are the vanguard of the Dominion," she said. "You do not yield to noise. Remember who you are." But even as she spoke, faint laughter drifted through the comm systems, uninvited. It grew, layered upon itself, until the room vibrated with the strange resonance of joy. Some officers removed their helmets, as if to confirm the sound's reality. Others glanced nervously toward the ceiling. "Shut it off," Althera commanded. "It cannot be isolated," the technician stammered. "The frequency is self-replicating." Seleth slammed her hand against the console. "Then destroy the source. Silence their networks." "We tried," Narai said. "Every attempt to suppress them only generates more responses. It's like cutting air. They multiply through reaction." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the quiet, persistent laughter that filled the room. Althera felt it crawling beneath her skin, unsettling and strangely human. She turned toward the viewport. On the planet below, lights shimmered like constellations. Fireworks blossomed in the skies, humans celebrating under their own invasion. "They've turned our arrival into a festival," she said softly. "What are your orders?" Seleth asked. Althera hesitated. Every instinct urged her to strike, to prove dominance through destruction. Yet some deeper awareness whispered that such a blow would only amplify the sound she could no longer escape. "Hold position," she said finally. "No further attacks." Seleth's eyes widened. "You would retreat?" "I would think," Althera said. "Something is happening here that our logic cannot measure." Narai stepped closer to the viewport. "Perhaps they understand the universe better than we do," she said. "They've accepted absurdity. They live inside it. Maybe laughter is their form of surrender and victory." Seleth shook her head. "Or madness. Is there a difference?" Narai asked. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the hum of the ship and the faint echo of distant celebration. Below, human broadcast continued, streaming images of aliens transformed into caricatures, voices remixed into song. Yet among the mockery, Althera noticed something she had not before: reverence. The humans laughed, but their laughter was not cruelty. It was connection. They were reaching towards something incomprehensible, binding themselves to the very power that threatened them. She exhaled slowly. "Transmit this to the Council," she said. "Our weapons cannot defeat what we do not understand." Seleth looked at her in disbelief. "You would admit weakness?" "I would admit reality," Althera replied. "They fight with meaning, not metal." The ship's sensors flickered. Across the fleet, unauthorized signals began to emerge. Human broadcasts merging with alien transmissions to form hybrid frequencies. The two civilizations, once divided by silence, now shared a single wavelength. Althera felt the resonance hum in her chest like a heartbeat. "In the broadcast blackout," she ordered. "Let them speak. Let us listen." Seleth turned sharply. "You risk contamination." "Perhaps contamination is the cure," Althera said. The laughter returned, softer now, almost musical. It filled the chamber like a memory of warmth. Althera closed her eyes and listened, not as an enemy, but as a student of something far older than power. "Do you hear it?" Narai whispered. "Yes," Althera said. "The sound of a species that has already won." Far below, the humans continued their celebration. Fireworks burst in spirals of color. Music climbed toward the stars. The fleets hovered motionless, suspended between fear and revelation. And in the quiet that followed, Althera realized the truth she had tried to deny. The war had never been about conquest. It had always been about understanding. The council chamber had never felt so quiet. The laughter that once echoed through the galactic relay had faded, leaving behind a stillness heavy with meaning. The matrons of the Dominion sat at their long obsidian table, each one cloaked in ceremonial silence, their expressions unreadable. In the center stood Althera Venn, the Supreme Matron of War, her figure reflected in the polished surface like a ghost confronting itself. Around her, the faint holographic projection of Earth shimmered, a fragile blue light amid endless dark. Seleth Ara was the first to break the silence. "Our fleets hover idle, Matron. The soldiers demand instruction. Do we strike, or do we retreat?" Her voice was strained, carrying the weight of centuries of discipline fraying at its edges. Althera did not answer once. She stared at the spinning planet, its lights blinking like a heartbeat. "Neither," she said finally. "We observe." "Observe," Seleth repeated, her disbelief cutting through the air. "We came to conquer, not to study jesters." "They are not jesters," Althera said softly. "There's something we have forgotten how to be." Across the chamber, Narai Tull stood quietly, her posture composed, but her eyes alive with curiosity. "Their broadcasts continue," she said. "The humans have sent a message in response to your inquiry." Althera turned. "And Narai hesitated. It's not a transmission in our language. It's a collection of sounds and moving images. Humans of different ages laughing together. Families, soldiers, children, even their wounded. There are no words, but the meaning is clear. Selith folded her arms. Mockery again. No, Narai said. It feels like invitation. The projection flickered, and suddenly the chamber was filled with human laughter once more. Different this time, warmer, layered with sincerity. The matrons shifted uneasily in their seats, some covering their ears, others staring in fascinated discomfort. Althera stood unmoving. The sound no longer grated against her senses. It resonated, low and rhythmic, echoing through the bones of the chamber. This is what they offer us, she said quietly. Not surrender, but understanding. Selith's eyes hardened. You would replace victory with sentiment? We are the Dominion, not a choir for primitives. The Dominion, Althera said, was built on fear, and fear has brought us only silence. Narai stepped closer to the holographic planet. When I was among them, I felt it, she said. Their laughter isn't denial, it's defiance against despair. They have learned to survive meaninglessness, to live without guarantees. We see control because we fear chaos, but they embrace it. The words hung in the air like a forbidden truth. Selith rose abruptly. You speak as though they are our teachers. Perhaps they are, Althera replied. Perhaps the universe grows weary of obedience. For the first time, the chamber's lighting dimmed automatically, reacting to the collective shift in emotion. The hologram of Earth expanded, surrounding them in a sphere of blue and green. Althera reached out, her hand passing through the projection as though to touch the world itself. Transmit this, she said to Narai. On every channel, tell them the war is over. The Dominion withdraws. Gasps erupted around the table. One of the elder matrons slammed her hand against the surface. You would surrender to laughter? I would surrender to reason, Althera said. We declared war on life itself, and found that it simply laughed in our faces. Perhaps that is the universe's answer to us. Selith's voice trembled with fury. And what of our legacy? Our order? Legacy built on fear cannot endure, Althera said. They have shown us another kind of power. Not dominance, but endurance. The order was given, and across the galaxy, the Dominion's armadas began to withdraw. Ships turned from their orbits in graceful arcs, engines igniting like falling stars. On Earth, human eyes looked upward as the skies cleared. The laughter faded into quiet awe, but the story did not end there. Weeks passed. Communications between Earth and the Dominion continued, not of threats, but of questions. Humans sent stories, music, fragments of language. The Council received data archives filled with art, history, and humor. At first, the matrons found it overwhelming, even offensive, but curiosity soon replaced contempt. For the first time in millennia, they learned. One evening, Althera convened a smaller gathering in her private chamber. Only Selith and Narai were present. The lights were soft, the air uncharacteristically warm. I've been studying their languages, Althera said. They possess over 6,000 forms of speech, yet the sound of laughter transcends all of them. It unites where words fail. Selith frowned. And what purpose does that serve? Connection, Althera replied. The one thing we lost when we chose control. Narai smiled faintly. Perhaps we feared connection because it makes us vulnerable. Vulnerability is the birthplace of strength, Althera said. These humans understand that instinctively. Selith looked away, her expression conflicted. I do not know if I can believe in such philosophy. Althera turned toward her gently. You do not have to believe, Selith. You only have to listen. For a moment, the chamber was filled again with a faint echo of recorded laughter, softer this time, like a memory carried by wind. Selith closed her eyes, and to her own surprise, she smiled. Narai watched them both, sensing that something irreversible had shifted. What will become of us now, she asked. Althera considered the question carefully. We will return to our worlds and remember what they have shown us. That existence is not obedience, but experience. that the universe is not conquered, it is shared. The transmission to the wider Dominion went out the next day, delivered in Althera's calm, resonant voice. To all who hear this, she said, the Dominion will no longer rule by silence. We will seek harmony, even in chaos. From the world called Earth, we have learned that laughter is not weakness, it is survival. Her words spread across the stars, carried through every relay and network. Some dismissed them as weakness. Others listened, uncertain but intrigued. A few quietly began to laugh. In time, the matrons returned to their seats in the council chamber. The great table remained the same, yet everything around it had changed. Holographic displays no longer showed war formations, but streams of shared communication from the human world. Children's songs, theatrical performances, fragments of humor from every corner of Earth played softly as background noise. Selith, once unshakable, now sat with her chin resting on her hand, listening. Narai stood beside her, radiant with quiet satisfaction, and Althera Venn, the Supreme Matron of War, sat at the head of the table. Her staff of command rested beside her, unused. The chamber lights glowed gently upon her face as she gazed at the living planet suspended in the air. For the first time in her long life, she laughed. It was not loud or defiant, but clear and unguarded, a sound that carried through the chamber and silenced all argument. The other matrons turned toward her, astonished. Then, slowly, one by one, they joined her, not in mockery, but in release. The sound built like a wave, rolling through the air until it reached a harmony unlike anything the Dominion had ever known. The laughter spread beyond the walls, transmitted through every open channel, echoing across the void between worlds. On Earth, humans heard it and laughed back, their voices mingling with those of the once dreaded conquerors. The galaxy, long accustomed to silence, trembled with sound. It was not war, nor victory, nor surrender. It was understanding, the quiet realization that even in the infinite dark, life still found a way to smile.